Although I think Mark Bushko was going to be joining us as well. I don't see that he's here yet. But let's start, because maybe by the time we get through the first couple of agenda items, he'll be able to join us. And I know that we have our auditors on the line for presentation, so I want to make sure that we're respectful of their time. So, Jonathan, we're okay to record?
Yep. Yes, we are. We're recording.
Thank you. All right, so then let me call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Today is Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. For the record, we have attending via Zoom board members Lorraine Pesky, Christopher Bayes, Jim Wright, and Christopher Anderson. And that constitutes, oh, and here's board member Mark Bushka as well. That constitutes our quorum, so we can jump right into item number 1. I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the regular meeting held January 19th, 2021.
So moved, Anderson.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Wright. Are there questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye, and one abstention would be board member Bushka. Moving into item 2, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the special meeting held February 9th, 2021.
So moved, Anderson.
Mr. Anderson?
Second, Bushka.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Bushka. Questions or comments on these minutes? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Abstention, abstention,
Oh,
Pesky.
I'm sorry, one abstention. For the record, Ms. Pesky is abstaining. Okay, that moves us right into item number 3. This is a presentation of the annual audit that was completed by Bloom Shapiro. We have Leslie Zoll on the call with us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this right over to you. Okay, Leslie?
That's perfect. Thank you for having us tonight. And with me today is Elena Clausen. She's the manager on the engagement, and she's here on the call as well. I'm going to try and share my screen if that's okay. Somebody let me know when they can see it.
Looks good, thank you.
You're good.
Okay, so let me just get started right here with the agenda. Let me see if I can turn my slides here. If you want to interrupt me and ask questions at any time, or you're having trouble hearing me, please let me know. So my presentation today is just going to start out by just sharing with you the scope of our engagement, what an audit entails, a high-level audit result summary, some financial highlights within the audit itself to share with you. And then I'm going to have Elena take it away to talk more about the federal and state single audit, some required communication, and then I will end the presentation with just some information about some new GASBs that you should know about, and the reason why you don't see Bloom Shapiro on these slides and what that CLA stands for. So I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So in terms of our scope of the engagement, management's responsible for presenting the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. We express opinions on those statements to make sure they're free from material misstatement. We also express an in relation to opinion on the state and federal single audits and some of the schedules within the back of the financial statement deliverable. And we also express an opinion on compliance with laws and regulations. In terms of internal control, I just want to share with you that we don't opine on internal controls. We develop an understanding of the internal controls as it relates to our audit testing. And we do provide a report on anything that we find that is material in nature. So if a significant deficiency or a material weakness comes to light during that understanding, we would be required to report those to you, both on the financial statement level as a whole, and then also on the major programs that we test in the federal and state single audit. So just to share with you today about the results of the audit for the city of Torrington, you did receive an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's what you'd want to receive each and every year, and you have so again. And there's no material findings and internal controls to report to you over the financial statements as a whole. In terms of the federal single audit report that we also do, you had an unmodified opinion on that major federal program that we tested, no compliance findings, no internal control issues to report. So a clean audit on the federal single audit as well. And then on the state side, you also received an unmodified opinion on the major state programs that we've tested. No compliance findings to report to you tonight, no internal control issues to note on the state single audit as well. So all around good reports. In terms of financial highlights, I gave you on this presentation just a few snapshots of the financial statements just to show you some high level numbers. The first schedule that's on the screen right now on slide 8 is your governmental and business type activities. So this schedule itself is on page 7 of the financial statements, if you want to look back at them, and that's part of the management discussion and analysis. And I like to show this schedule because it shows full accrual basis of accounting, and it also shows a comparative from year to year. So your governmental activities column here represents all of your funds within the city, with the exception of WPCA, your pension and OPEB, and any of your custodial funds, your agency funds. And those funds are funds that you're just holding on behalf of other organizations. So in total, your governmental activities does have a negative net asset position of 49,000. This isn't, the net assets did increase, however, from 19 to 20 by 3.5 million. So you're definitely going in the right direction there. And then your business type activities, your WPCA enterprise fund increased 230,000 for the year. And your net assets is 10,649. I actually think those are million, those are in thousands. So I apologize for that, to confuse you. These are not rounded numbers though. So on slide 9, this is your governmental funds. So these are what we opine on as major funds. So you have your general fund, your bonded projects fund, your WPCA infrastructure fund, and then some of your total non-major governmental funds are combined in the last column on Exhibit 3. And this can be found in your financial statements on page 17. And so I just wanted to bring to light your balance sheet as of 6/30/2020. You have a fund balance in your general fund of 18.9 million, and that's an increase of 2.6 million from the prior year. Your bonded projects fund has a committed fund balance of 11.4 million, and that's up 3.5 million from last year. And then your WPCA infrastructure projects are up 2.8 million from last year. You have a negative unassigned at 8.6 million, and that's really just due to timing of when you're expending for these projects, and then you will ultimately permanently bond, and then that money will then be put into that fund. And then the last column, non-major governmental funds, You have a fund balance combined of 16.7 million. That's slightly down from last year of 742,000. And again, that's a accumulation of several funds, and that can be shown in the back of the report. The detail is attached in the back of the report for you if you need to see more details on that, what makes up that column. And these are on the modified basis of accrual. So they do not reflect capital assets or long-term debt, anything long-term in nature within this schedule. Just to highlight some general fund items for fund balance, the 18.9 million that I spoke of, 97,000 of that is committed to revaluation. And then you have 906,000 assigned for encumbrances for a total of unassigned fund balance of 17.9 million. And that represents 13% of your total general fund expenditures. And then I just wanted to show you a snapshot of what that unassigned fund balance is in relation to your previous years. And so as you can see, your unassigned fund balance has increased quite steadily in the past 5 years to get to that 13%. Then moving on to your proprietary funds. So these are your business type activity, which is the WPCA Enterprise Fund. And your net position is 10.6 million. That's up 230,000 from last year. And then your internal service funds all combined went up 930,000, and your unrestricted net position in those funds combined is 8.2 million. Moving on, if you will, to the third type of funds within your financial statements, your fiduciary funds. So the first column here represents your pension and OPEB funds. So that's both of your pension plans plus your OPEB trust fund together. You have a total net position as of 6/30 of 105.6 million. And then your custodial funds, you have 400,000 being held on behalf of others. And then just to give you a quick snapshot of some highlights within the notes to the financial statements, I thought that it would be useful for you to see where you are in terms of your net pension liabilities. For your municipal plan, your net pension liability is 10 million. That's 80% funded right now. Police and fire at 39.3 million is 62% funded. And then you have your net OPEB liability of 140.6 million at this point. And then I'm going to let Elena talk about the federal and state single audits.
Thanks, Leslie. So as Leslie mentioned, in conjunction with our audit, we also perform a federal and state single audit. In terms of the federal single audit, there were $4.8 million of total awards expended. The major programs that we tested were the Child Nutrition Cluster, Title I grants, and the Special Education Cluster. We had an unmodified opinion on major program compliance, and we had no compliance or internal control findings. Similarly, for the state single audit, the total awards expended were $59.2 million. We tested the Local Transportation Capital Program, the Clean Water Revenue Grant and Bonds Fund, and the Municipal Grants and Aid. We also had an unmodified opinion on major program compliance, and there were no compliance or internal control findings. We are required to communicate with those charged with governance twice a year. So once at the beginning of the audit and once at the end of the audit. So I'm just going to touch on some of the things that we're required to communicate to you. The first being that there were no new standards adopted for fiscal year 2020. GASB actually issued a standard to delay the implementation of any standards that were supposed to be implemented in 2020. And those were delayed for future years. And the next thing that I need to talk about is the fact that the financial statements include significant estimates. So the items that contain estimates are the capital assets useful lives and the net pension liability and net OPEB liability, which are driven by estimates that the actuary makes. Continuing on with the auditor's communication, we had no disagreements with management. Management did not consult with any other accountants. There were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There were no uncorrected misstatements and no independence issues were noted. Another thing that got issued to you guys was the management letter, and we had a few recommendations noted. This year, there was a new item, and that was a reconciliation issue between the city and the Board of Education due to encumbrances. Board of Education encumbrances were posted incorrectly to the financial management system, and this caused a variance between the reconciliation of the city and Board of Education. This issue was corrected by the current staff, and we recommend that the new staff at the Board of Education get additional training on the system when it comes to encumbrances. Then we had a few recommendations that we also had last year. So last year, as part of the audit, our advisory department came in and performed an information technology risk assessment. And there were a couple items that came out of that assessment that were not yet implemented this year. So those were develop a laptop security program, upgrade older workstations to a supported version of Windows because Windows 7 is approaching the end of its extended support life, develop and test comprehensive disaster recovery plan, perform regular tests and backup of media, and consider upgrading to a more comprehensive firewall solution. Additionally, our next comment was about the uniform guidance. We recommend that the city and Board of Education update their procurement policies to include all of the elements that are required by the new uniform guidance standard. As it stands right now, the only policy that is updated to uniform guidance is the school nutrition program procurement policy. The next recommendation is around cybersecurity assessment. We recommend that an annual vulnerability assessment be performed, one that would identify and evaluate exposures that could negatively affect the city's ability to conduct business. Finally, we also recommend that a fraud risk assessment be performed in order to identify, analyze, and manage the risk of asset misappropriation. This can be done formally, which would mean an outside accountant or consulting firm would come in and perform the risk assessment, or it could be done informally by a management level individual who has extensive knowledge over the entity. And I will hand it back over to Leslie to talk about the new GASB standards.
So I just want to share with you some of the upcoming standards. As Elena was saying, due to COVID, GASB delayed a lot of these standards, which was helpful to all of us during this time. So right now, I just wanted to share with you any GASBs that would, be a heavier lift than others. So in 2021, actually, your statement 84 has already been implemented by the city. They were implemented earlier by your prior auditors, so that's all set. So really nothing next year to be too worried about. The other two are clarifications on other standards, as well as just very specific, like statement 90 is very specific to a certain transaction if you have equity investments in other entities. We don't usually see that in Connecticut. For 2022, however, Statement 87 could be a heavier lift for our municipalities here in Connecticut in regards to leases, depending on how many leases that you have and the complexity of those contracts. And that relates to not only operating leases and capital leases, but whether you're the leasee or the leaseor. So if you are renting land or renting space or buildings, those contracts also come into play during the standard. So we're asking our municipalities now versus later to start gathering that information to provide their auditors with an inventory, so you know how many of those contracts need to be evaluated and valued, so that you'll be prepared when the standard actually comes into play at July 1, 2021 for the 2022 fiscal year. The other standards are again based on very specific transactions, so not too worried about those other standards. It's really just GASB standard 87 for 2022. Same for 2023. They're specific standards on specific guidance on specific transactions. So not too much of a lift for most of our municipalities in Connecticut unless you have these transactions. But I did want to share those with you so you know what's coming down the pike in the next few years. And then before any questions, I just want to share with you why our slides say CLA now and not Bloom Shapiro. We are now, Elena and I and all of our family members are actually now employees of CLA. That was effective 1/1. So our entire Bloom Shapiro family has merged into CLA. We do believe that the culture, the methodology, and the standards that we lived by at Bloom Shapiro are certainly there and exist and is the same at CLA. We suspect that we will be heading up the Northeast. They are a national firm, but they do not have a Northeast presence. So we will exist as we are in the Northeast. So you will see the same people coming to your city as you would with Bloom Shapiro. So not much has changed. Our fees will not change for your current contract, nor will any of our staff. But we do, CLA has a robust state and local government presence all over the country. They serve over 3,500 government clients. They do state audits as well as local clients and quasi governments, just like Bloom Shapiro has. And we just believe that with this merger, we'll be able to give more resources, not just to our clients, but also to our staff. So we are happy about that merger and just want to share that with you. So I look forward to more resources coming your way with that. And I will open it up to questions.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. So the floor is open. Are there questions from any of the board members regarding the audit, the presentation, or the audit itself?
Mayor, I have a couple, Mayor.
Yes.
Mark Bushka. Just a couple questions on the actual financials. Our fund balance, our undesignated fund balance, and our pension funding. I'm just curious as how our town compares to other towns that you may audit of comparable size.
Okay, well, I can share with you, I think I said in my slide, one was 80% funded, one was 60% funded. That's certainly a good percentage. Certainly something that is favorable across the board in Connecticut. I do believe your net OPEB liability is on the higher side than what I've seen in the past, but you have an OPEB trust fund, and I'm sure that will continue to grow as you move forward.
And how about our fund balance? It was 13% of our budget. How does that compare?
So bond rating agencies usually like to see 13 to 20. But there's a large range and there's several different metrics that you meet with the bond council. So I wouldn't be concerned about 13% at all.
Any other questions for Leslie?
Thank you.
No,
You're
thank you,
welcome.
Mr. Bushka.
Not for Leslie, Mayor, but on the audit subject. I know we have Mr. Aram on. I just want to hear maybe a little bit more about those encumbrances. I know they were solved, and I'm sure he has a plan moving forward on how we prevent those things in the future, but just wanted to see if he wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi.
If you didn't realize, our accountant left beginning of July, and we had a 2-week hiatus till the next accountant was hired. So in that time, we found out about the encumbrance with the help of Alice and Gina. And when the new accountant came in, we straightened it out, and it's all. And now the new accountant knows what to do. But there was a hiatus of 2 weeks between the old person left and the new one hired.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mr. Aram.
Floor is still open. Any other questions?
Yeah, along the line of the management letter recommendations for prior years, the 2019 items, are we on track to having those corrected?
So Alice is on, I don't know if you wanted to jump in, Alice, on those management.
Well, excuse me. Good evening, everybody. The fraud risk assessment, we haven't done anything specific on that. I mean, it's something we do to a certain extent on an ongoing basis. We haven't hired anybody outside to do that. The cybersecurity assessment, I believe IT is doing a lot of work on that to make sure that we don't have a lot of exposure there. The uniform guidance, I do know that our purchasing department has signed up for updates on that and educational series on that. So we are moving forward with that. That's the only update I have available on those items.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mayor Laureen.
Hi, Lorraine.
Leslie, the city went through a challenge with our technology being hacked. Is anything that we've done, not anything, but what we have done since that time, are you pleased with that and think that we're moving in the right direction that way?
So all the conversations that I've had with the mayor and with Alice seems to be that you're doing the right things. You consulted with an outside party. I believe your insurance company directed you to someone to work on that, and they're continuing to make improvements on that.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Then I guess, thank you very much, Leslie. Appreciate your presentation and the work that you did on this audit. And look forward to working with you as we get close to the end of the 2021 year. Time goes by.
It does. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into item 4. I will entertain a motion to authorize the mayor to appropriate a sum equal to 10% of the municipal coronavirus relief funds, the acronym or initials CRF, received from the state of Connecticut to be paid to the Torrington Area Health District in accordance with the terms of eligible uses of the funding as defined in a letter from CTOPM dated December 16th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mrs. Pesky.
Thank you, Ms. Pesky.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bushka. So moved and seconded. Questions?
Yes. At the bottom of the letter from OPM, there's a chart that shows we received or allocated, I don't know if we received it, 396,000. Is that, do we have we received that to date, and how does that compare to what our actual costs were?
So actually, the amount we are receiving is, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's 524,000.
528.
528. Okay, good.
528, 508. I have that.
Right. So the expenses to date are somewhere around $160,000. And the other additional appropriation was the proportional share per capita that was distributed to all of the municipalities across the state. And in this situation, what we are proposing is, and which is what almost all of the municipalities are doing across the state, is to do a 10% appropriation of the total amount for Torrington Area Health District. And I can tell you, and I know, Chief Talley is on, I can tell you that throughout the last 12 months, and actually even 14 months, because before the emergency executive orders were entered, Torrington Area Health District was already on the trajectory that this pandemic was taking. They have been absolutely instrumental in our ability to respond to this pandemic, to establish testing, to establish vaccinations, to dealing with daily phone calls between the city and the school board. And I think that they have tapped their own resources far and above what we may have tapped our resources. And I think that this is an appropriate use of these funds. And I don't know, Chief Talley, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the sentiment. Torrington Area Health has been a huge stakeholder and a huge asset to our Torrington operations, and they really have prioritized and been involved in our process. The other thing I would note is when they distributed these CRF funding, I think the mindset from the state was sort of operating under a planning assumption that each municipality had their own health district, and that 10% funding would go to the municipality's health district, which put municipalities like ours that actually operate in a regional cooperative health district, that funding wasn't sent to the health district. So some of this funding on the CRF was intended to help offset those local health districts. They just didn't factor in operations that have multiple municipalities operating under one health district. So this allocation will actually get some of those funds to Torrington Area Health that initially were intended for local public health to help offset those contact tracing, testing, and vaccination efforts.
Thank you, Chief. Are there questions on the motion?
So Mayor, that's additional funding beyond the normal allocation that goes to Torrington Area Health, correct?
Yes, so that would be outside of our per capita contribution. I think you last week may have received the letter on our annual obligation. Yeah. This is in addition to that annual obligation.
I know in that letter they had noted how they did all they could in order to keep that per capita cost down. So I'm glad that they're getting this money in order to kind of help them continue to do what they're doing for the community. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
I agree with Chris. I had started an email to you when we first got, and that our allocation, while I love to see a line item going down in our budget, it certainly didn't bode well for the health department that our population went down a little bit. They're trying to hold the line, so they hold their percentage or the amount that we have per person that we have to pay. But they have done yeoman's work and have led the Northwest corner. And I was so pleased, didn't even have to send the email when I saw your item on the agenda. So thank you.
Is this just from Torrington or the other regional contributors to Health District, are they putting in any, do they get any too to put in?
Yes, yes. So the other, oh, chief, I'm thinking is it 40 towns that they represent? The Torrington Area Health District?
It's close to that. I don't
Yeah.
have it before you, Mayor.
So, and yes, each municipality is doing their proportional share, also keeping in mind that we're the largest municipality in this region. So their contribution, if it's 10% of what they received, is really quite a bit smaller than what we will be providing.
Yeah, as Ms. Pesky said, when I saw that, I'm like, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, their contribution from us is going down. I just didn't see how that was feasible for them. But now, you know, now that this allocation, especially from all their other towns that are part of that, it really does make sense. So I'm glad we're doing that.
All right. If there are no other questions, then I'll call this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Right, item 5, I will entertain a motion to receive information or reports from department heads.
So move.
I'll
Thank
second
you,
it.
Mr. Bay, seconded by Mr. Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so I don't know, Alice, was there anything that you needed to add?
Nothing this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Carol Anderson is on. Was there anything from the city clerk's office, Carol?
No, nothing new here.
Thank you. Dan Farley is on the call. Dan, was there anything you wish to?
No, I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. And before I call the next department head, Chief Towie just confirmed for me, boy, I was way off. Torrington Area Health District covers 18 towns and 2 boroughs. So thank you, Chief. We're still on our department heads. I thought I saw Sue Lebonsky. She, I think, parted ways with us, but Ed Aram is still on the call. Ed, anything to add this evening, Ed?
Nothing. Sue had to go to another meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I know that you're stacked up here. Penny is on the call. I do believe that she does not have a microphone from her home, so we can all just say hello to her. Moving on into item 6, I will entertain a motion to consider business by the mayor and members of the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Thank you, Chris Bayes,
Second.
and seconded by Mr. Bushka. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're open. Anything this evening, Ms. Pesky?
Want to welcome Bad Dog Brewery and excited to hear of Salt 2.0 coming into the Mertz building. Those are really good. That's really good news for downtown. And something out there about the Hanks building being sold and perhaps Hanks coming back. And, you know, it's making it sound like I'm a big eater and a big drinker and all, but those kinds of things make up for a vibrant city center. And I'm excited for this pandemic to be in a position over to an extent that we would be able to visit all those places a lot.
I agree. Mr. Wright?
Anything on the peddler ordeal?
Yes. So on the Yankee Peddler, as this board knows, we did pursue a petition for the appointment of a receiver. That petition was filed in the Superior Court. I think the 2nd or 3rd week of January. We just received word that we do have a hearing scheduled for March 10th. So I will be attending that hearing with Attorney Nelligan, and fingers crossed, be able to present a strong enough case to the court to convince them that it is in the best interest of that property, the city, and the property owner to allow a receiver to step in and take over stewardship of that building.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an important project for us to take at this time. Mr. Anderson, anything this evening?
Not too much. I mean, glad to see the results from the audits. I mean, with no findings, no news is good news. And good to hear that our fund balance is still hovering right at that 13% mark. I think our informal policy was 7 to 10, right?
That is correct.
Okay, but with her comment saying some of the bond ratings agencies are looking at 13 to 20, and especially with how things have been going, I know we're usually pretty keen to spend a little bit of the fund balance to help stabilize the mill rate. I don't know that I want to jump straight to that when we get to that discussion in a couple of weeks, but we'll keep that in our toolbox as we will. But we'll have to do everything else we can before going there.
Okay. No, I appreciate the early signs of what the board may be thinking of as we enter into the budget cycle. When I was listening to Mr. Bushka ask the question about our pension funding and OPEB obligation, I wasn't trying to read into what he was trying to say. I'm sorry, my lights are on a timer, so I have to get up and do a jumping jack. So with that said, I'm going to send it over to Mr. Bushka. Is there anything you wanted to add?
It's that time of year. I'm just wondering how we're doing on our snow removal budget with another storm coming in a couple more days.
So I have not received the latest update. I will tell you with this new superintendent of streets, although he's been here for a couple of years, I am so happy that he does provide us with, the dollar cost of each storm. He breaks it down by man hours, by salt, by truck repairs and all of that. So I would say that we're okay where we are, but I can give you better information after I get a report out after the last, it's hard to say last storm. They've been coming so quick and on the heels of each other, that I'll have more information for you, and I can email it to the board if you wish. Mr. Bayes.
Not much. Just want to echo on what Ms. Besky said as well. There's a lot of really good stuff going on in town. So I implore everyone, whether it's takeout or going there in person, you feel comfortable to do it. There's a lot of great things going on. So anytime you get the chance to get out there, it's good. It's good to see, but nothing else this evening. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So I will
Mrs.
just
Mayor?
add, I'm sorry, did I miss anybody on the committee?
That was me. I just have another question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Upcoming budget relevant meetings, do you have a schedule of that? And good, thank you.
So I was trying to finalize this because the Board of Safety has expressed an interest in spending a little bit more time going over the respective safety budgets. So I've revamped the budget calendar this year to afford them, the early option of doing a deep dive on those respective budgets. I will send this budget calendar out to all of you. I am looking to establish the budget subcommittee again this year. We will be doing all of these meetings by Zoom. I believe you may have received the budget summary reports earlier today. My plan is to do a full review of the safety budgets the first week of March, and then utilize the 3 Wednesdays in the remainder of the March calendar to do budget subcommittee reviews of the safety budgets, public work budgets, and some of those other departments that may have been seeing some significant changes over the last year. So volunteers, budget subcommittee, Wednesdays, 5:30. Yay, thank you, Miss Pesky. And Mr. Bayes. And I know it's tough for you to do a 5:30 meeting. Is it better for us to schedule that a little bit later if that's the case, Mr. Bayes?
No, 5:30 is good. I usually get back in town at 5.
Okay, all right. So I'll circulate this calendar so that everybody has it. We've received, the early reports on the governor's budget. I'll also send those revenues out, although we know they're going to change, particularly in this situation where he is utilizing some of the coronavirus stimulus funds, federal government funds, and some bonded funds to do municipal aid to the 25 distressed municipalities. So the early revenue projections, I'm of course keeping my fingers crossed that it all comes to fruition, but those extra funds do come with strings, and we want to make sure that we're planning appropriately for those. I would also add, I don't know if all of you have had a chance to check your email today, but I did provide written testimony today to the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee regarding Senate Bill, I think it's 873, where there is a proposal to revamp the pilot program, that payment in lieu of taxes. As you know, we have a significant number of state-owned properties in the city of Torrington, and a hospital that falls under the same pilot program. When I did the math 3 years ago, and was appealing to Senator Whitcoast to see what he could do to help us, get the funding that was supposed to be appropriated under those statutes, we recognize that we should be receiving somewhere around $1.7 million annually on those pilot payments. And what we have been receiving is closer to $380,000. So there's $1.4 million that could do a lot to advance education, to certainly spur economic development, or simply make sure we have sufficient funds for all the snow and ice events that happen in the city. So that testimony was submitted today. I provided you a copy of my statement with a little background information, and I will continue to advocate for that full funding if it's possible. Those are the stable, predictable funding streams that we want to count on, not the one-time $3 million, 1.5 coming from federal stimulus money and 1.5 coming from bonding. There's no stability in receiving those kinds of funds. Not that I'm looking a gift horse in the mouth, but those are the things I think we want to be fighting for. This is a year, once again, we're looking at, budget increases. It costs more money to do, the stuff that we're required to do. I'm taking a slightly different look at our revenues because here in the city, I hear Ms. Pesky say year after year, we're down to it's people, it's salaries and benefits that are driving our budgets because we've carved ourselves to the bone on everything else. So I do think it's the responsible thing for us to do right now is to look at those revenue streams and to see, are there other places we could be looking for revenue? Are they increases in fees? Have I missed something that other municipalities may be taking advantage of by way of revenues? And see what we can do to solve those gaps and end our reliance on fund balance and transfers from our internal service fund. And increase that OPEBs from less than 0.5% to something over 1%.
Hey, but we're on the map though.
We are. And with our bond counsel and our bond advisor, they said, if you just demonstrate that you're working at it, that goes a long way. So any questions on?
Mayor, I have another question. In anticipation of the budget season coming up, could we put the public comment agenda item back onto the budget? Onto the agenda. I'm sure if people were beating down our doors to want to participate, they would be sending things in and we would be getting that information from John. But I think it's important for it to be on there as an agenda item. And it hasn't been since, you know, as we've gone to Zoom, where actually more people could participate. And did start participating last year during the budget season. So if we could put that back on the agenda, I think that would be a good idea.
So we do have public comment on the agendas. It's certainly not on Board of Finance agenda here. What we do is we encourage anybody that, actually it is on the agenda. If you look at here, Torrington residents may submit comments in writing to the city clerk's office.
Yes, but we used to, when we met in person, there was an item and you would say, does anybody from the public want to address the board? So and I just think and even if it's, then nobody has, we haven't received anything. That speaks to the fact that we're operating sometimes in a vacuum. And because a lot of people aren't making any comments to us. And I think it just shows that we want to encourage people to do it.
Okay, yes. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none and there being no further business before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Second,
Thank you, Ms. Teskey. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Stay safe in the next storm that's predicted.
Thank you.
Thank you.